Welcome, I'm Dr. Sam Domingo, and I'm a licensed psychologist, board certified in behavioral sleep medicine, and I'm also the clinical content lead here at Sleep Reset. Today I want to talk to you about stimulus control and why it's important for sleep. Stimulus control is a behavioral technique that is based on classical conditioning. So what does that mean? Classical conditioning is a type of learning that happens when we associate two things together. You may have heard of the famous experiment with dogs and bells by Ivan Pavlov. Pavlov noticed that dogs would start to drool when they saw food, but then he started ringing a bell every time he gave them food. After a while, the dogs started to drool just at the sound of the bell, even if there was no food around. This happened because they learned to associate the sound of the bell with the arrival of food. In classical conditioning, we have an unconditioned stimulus, like food, that naturally triggers a response, like drooling. We then introduce a neutral stimulus, like a bell, that doesn't naturally trigger our response. We pair the neutral stimulus with the unconditioned stimulus, so bell and food, and after a while, the neutral stimulus alone, the bell, can trigger the response, drooling. This is called a conditioned response. Classical conditioning happens all around us, often without us even realizing it. For example, you might feel anxious whenever you go to a dentist's office because you have learned to associate the dentist office with the discomfort of dental procedures. Or you might feel happy and comforted when you smell cookies because you've learned to associate the smell of cookies with your grandmother. If you've ever struggled with insomnia, you may notice becoming wide awake the moment you get into bed. Stimulus control is particularly useful for people who struggle with insomnia and spend a lot of time in bed attempting to sleep but are not able to. This often leads to what we call conditioned arousal, which is when the brain starts associating the bed with wakefulness. To break this association, stimulus control recommends that we only use the bed for three things: sleep, sex, and when you're sick. We call these the 3 S's. We should also get out of bed if we're not sleeping within 20 minutes, give or take. A good indicator of when to get out of bed without looking at the clock, which we shouldn't be doing, is when we start to experience cognitive or physiological arousal, like worrying about being able to fall back asleep, or whenever being in bed becomes uncomfortable or unpleasant. Of course, if you have mobility issues or chronic pain or medical problems, we understand that getting out of bed may not be possible. In this case, shifting position in bed or sitting up in bed is what I would recommend. Once you're out of bed, it is helpful to engage in quiet and or boring activities that can help increase sleepiness again. This may include reading a book that's not super interesting, or maybe that you've read before, doing an easy crossword puzzle, working on a puzzle, adult coloring books, meditation, relaxation exercises, listening to soothing music, or even self-massage. Just remember to keep the lights dim to avoid increasing wakefulness. It's also helpful to create a plan for nocturnal awakenings in case they happen, so that you don't have to think about what to do on the spot, especially in the middle of the night. For example, you can set up the couch with blankets for comfort and warmth, set aside a book or whatever activity you choose, and set your slippers and robe next to the bed so that it's an easier transition to a different room if applicable. Stimulus control is an effective technique for breaking that bed arousal connection and improving sleep. By following these simple guidelines, you can help your brain associate the bed with sleep and improve the quality of your sleep over time.